Hello, everybody. Sara and Dianne here. After some technical hiccups, we're recording a conversation we wanted to do live on Facebook. And unfortunately, we can't include our audiences in this conversation, but I'm pretty sure we're still going to be able to, as we dive deep into experiences, I'm sure we'll be able to share some insights with the audience that they can apply. And then if anybody has a question afterwards, they can always leave a comment and we'll right there to serve. So how are you?
I am fabulous. How are you?
What's going on in your world today?
What?
What's going on in your world today?
Well, you know, it's so interesting because after, we had that epic conversation last week, it was like just observing how, well, I think as moms, we've been observing how this is affecting this kind of timelessness and unique space that we're in, how that's been affecting our children. And then just really allowing, as opposed to, I think as moms, we really always try to have the answer and come up with a solution. And even sometimes that solution just being like hugging and saying everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And in this kind of an unprecedented, experience, it's really, even though we may say something like everything's going to be okay, a child, especially these Aquarian children, which is a topic we can totally jam on, but these children that are born, post 2009, they're wired differently. They literally have some genetic upgrades that allow them to be incredibly sensitive to stimuli because they have to be, because they're in a world where they are being inundated with information technology at a rate that is unprecedented to any other generation before it. So if they didn't start, if we as a human species didn't start to kind of upgrade the genetics, I mean, this is kind of my theory as a physiologist, this is why we're at where we're at right now, because we're getting basically, 10,000 years of an evolutionary process in the span of like a couple of months. And it's like, what did I say it was the other day? It was like power puberty.
Yeah, I love that.
It's like power puberty, right? It's like we're all going through puberty times infinity. And it's awkward and painful and really scary. And we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what the world is going to look like. So the point is that we're saying this to our children, like everything's going to be okay, but they are way, way savvier than that. And so it doesn't matter what we say. I think one of the most important lessons I know I've learned as a parent of a child like this is it doesn't matter. And perhaps even before this, I mean, I think grand scheme of things, human to human, most humans have enough sensitivity and intelligence to pay attention to somebody's energy.
Yes.
Beyond their words.
Exactly.
Again, in this age, right, of leadership, and people are more sensitive and more intelligent around it. These kids, though, are born that way. So they literally are like tuning in, and they are picking up this frequency of, even if you're a parent who feels good and calm, it doesn't matter. There's the fear of the collective, and that's heavy. So as leaders, we're experiencing that fear, and we're metabolizing it. As we're doing that, these children are picking up. So either way, they're picking up energy of unrest and uneasiness.
Yes.
So then what do we do as parents if we are understanding and we are sensitive of how sensitive they are?
So let's just talk about some of the symptoms, how this might be showing up. I know we were talking about how your daughter is experiencing. I'm going to share how my daughters are experiencing this thing, and what we are doing in some pragmatic ways, and then also the inner work to help them. So what's your daughter been going through, and how old is she?
So she's 9, and I love that we have, we share kind of these beautiful ages. And I think that it's interesting to talk about kids at different ages. So this conversation, we get to just simply show up in our experiences as moms who have younger children, and how that's affecting younger children. I believe every child is different. My daughter is experiencing very continuous nightmares, what I would even qualify as, and somebody who is an avid student of dreams and has done a lot of dream study over the years. It's just such a fun topic. What I would describe more as a trembling experience. So unspecified, whereas nightmares usually create a very vivid imagery that somebody remembers, and it usually is as they're waking up, then they kind of like bring this story alive. Who knows how that actually works. We still don't know a lot about this stuff, but this is more of a trembling. So waking up anywhere from 2 to 5 times a night in just shaking, trembling, just, I want mommy and daddy, I want mommy and daddy. Go into her room and it's just, and she's awake, her eyes are wide open, but she's not awake. She's coming into this like lucidity, right? But it's like an awake lucidity. It's very interesting. And so just getting her into that, like, it's like a swaddling, like I swaddle her basically, like squeeze her. And it doesn't take long for her to calm down. The interesting dynamic though is it is an absolute mom bio freak out. So my personal opportunity and ability to go back to sleep is because the biology is just like, you see your kid trembling and they screech. So she usually has like a screech, not a cry, but like screeching, like, ah! And she wakes up in the morning remembering that she was up throughout the night, but she doesn't have any, there's no, she's not putting anything together, connecting any dots. So that's been the biggest symptom. And the other physiological symptom is just what would make kind of logical sense, which is she has been sleeping so late and going to bed so much earlier. Normally she asks to stay up. Past month, she's actually asking to go to bed before, way before what she would normally consider her bedtime, like up to an hour before. And when I say she's sleeping late, this child used to get up at 6. I have to wake her up. This morning I woke her up, it was 8:55 and she was sound asleep.
Gotcha. Wow.
What about your kids?
Mine are young too, 7 and 5. And it's almost like total opposite of the spectrum. The 7-year-old freezes and she would be completely overwhelmed with the simplest things. I shared the other day as we were homeschooling, just one of the examples. It was a simple project. They were doing pollination. So they were supposed to get a bag of chips so that crumbs get on the fingertips and then see how that gets transferred on a paper. And the project showed that, you can draw a flower on a paper. She absolutely froze. It took an hour and a half to calm her down, to just process that, hey, it doesn't even have to be a flower. It can be just a piece of paper. Absolutely terrified of, how am I going to do this? I can't do this. I don't know how. It's not going to be perfect. How many petals, how many colors, and was shaking as she was sitting. I was like, wow, this is insane. And this is just one of the examples of her absolutely freezing and then either crying or just withdrawing. And she's just, not sleepwalking per se, but she's just not present in conversations. The little one, on the other hand, she is like a firecracker. And if you ever watch the movie Inside Out,
Yes.
the angry
Yeah.
guy who pushes the paddles, and the fire comes
That's
out.
her.
That is her. And there's a lot of explosions per day over simplest things. And crying, they're both expressing very emotionally, they're expressing this distress, and like crying and crying and crying over the smallest things. And then it's like turning a light switch with shift of the focus. It's like smiles in the game and then crying again. I was like, whoa, it's like 180 pendulum swinging back and forth all day long. And then interestingly, both of them had UTIs recently, which my 7-year-old suffered from for multiple years when a couple of years ago. And we went through the whole, medical, Western medicine procedures. And I ended up taking her to urologist a couple of times, and all they wanted to do was up the dose of laxatives. They refused to have any conversations around diet, mental well-being, emotional support. None of that were they willing to talk about. So like, if you don't want to talk about those things, I can't bring her here anymore because we got to look deeper. So then we found a solution. Those things subsided. Everything was great. And then they came back recently, and then the little one as well. So yeah, it's their way of coping, I guess. Not necessarily coping, but expressing on a physical level, expressing what they can't articulate, what they don't even have the vocabulary for, much less, when you're an adult and something's off, but you can't quite express it, much less them. And then I remember as I was talking to my 7-year-old, and we tried, FaceTime, their best friends. We do a lot of activities outside. We set aside one-on-one time with each one of them so they can express themselves, they feel hugged and embraced and supported. But as I was talking to my 7-year-old, it transported myself back to when I was 7. And I remember when Balkan War just broke out, and my family was sheltered for relatively short amount of time because luckily our country was spared. But for the time being, no one knew how things are going to go. And I was 7. And
wow. Interesting that you were the same age.
Yeah, absolutely. And I felt I felt confused. Like, are we safe? Are we not safe? Is it going to be okay? Is it not going to be okay? Can I do something? No one's going to talk to me about any of those things. So it was just a very, very interesting dynamic. And as I was putting myself in her shoes, it's like, what do I wish I knew back then or was told back then that I could possibly do today to help her? Because in many ways, there are parallels. We don't know what's going on. We don't know how long it's going to last. We don't know what the impact is going to be, and does she feel powerless? Does she even know what did that mean? So just having a lot of conversations and checking in with her all the time. But then on the other hand, there's this fine line. It's like, don't want to evoke it too much, because then that's all they're going to be thinking about. If you consistently check in, oh, you didn't feel good earlier. Are you feeling any better? And then bring back the memories. Oh yeah, that's right. I wasn't feeling good. As opposed to just letting it go. So it's a very, very interesting time.
In the correlation between, it's interesting, like what's coming up for you, right? And how that is affecting, like there's a couple layers there.
Yeah.
That's super interesting. So what have you found has been working with regard to easing your children? I mean, we can definitely talk about it. I could offer a couple insights around UTIs, which is very interesting, but what's been working for you?
Interestingly enough, it's going against the typical suggestion that we have gotten, even from school. They put together an amazing platform to help homeschool, and they created a suggested timeline, the whole daily schedule, you know, to help parents from this time to this time do this, from this time to the da, 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 da. And it's interesting because when you look around and you look for the tips of how to work from home for somebody who's new to it, it's the same thing. You set the strict schedule. For me and my kids, I found out that those strict schedules are really freaking us out. That we wanted to create the fluency. It's like, okay, these are a couple of things we need to do today, and then we'll just feel into when is the right time to do them. And we'll get them out of the way. And just leaving the flexibility, the schedule, um, being present in the moment, which is interesting. Right before we started this recording, I was listening to Dr. Shafali. For anybody who doesn't know her, she's all about conscious parenting. And towards the end, it was something interesting she said. You know, it's like, as an expert, I can see myself right now not walking my talk. And she's like, I can apply all the theory and everything else to my clients and to myself, but when it comes to my kid, I come back to the norms of expectations and trying to make sure that my kid still fits in, and worrying about what the future is going to bring if I slack on homeschooling or whatever it is. And then it was a great reminder to still, no matter what's going on, to just be present. And the other day I was listening to Gary Vaynerchuk, and there was another parent who was really stressing out about balancing school and homework. I mean, working from home. And he puts it in perspective, and he's like, you know, right now it might seem like a lot, but if you elevate your perspective and if you take a look into what is going to be the thing that matters to your kid when he's 27, is going to be the fact that you missed one day of homeschooling or a week of homeschooling, if they needed the emotional support, if they need your presence. So I think the bottom line here is just, what has helped my girls and myself is just to be present and take every single moment as is. Because like you said too, you can tell something to a child and you can put the game face on, but if the energy is not congruent to it, they will figure it out. They will tune into your energy, not your facial expressions and the words. So it's a real exercise also for me to be really grounded, really present every single day with them. And patience, a lot of patience, which is interesting because the crying fits,
Yeah.
the emotional breakouts, it's like red buttons for me. It's like,
oh yeah, because we're feeling it too. So it's like and then you have this additional trigger of some childhood trauma.
yeah.
So of course it's going to kick up all of that.
So it's like,
yeah. Yep.
what about you? Did you find anything to help her with the trembles?
Yeah, I mean, I love what you said. Definitely holding space for that, because it is just showing up. And, you know, I'd love to touch on this whole concept of being present, because it really, it's been stirring up quite a bit personally and just with her. So as kind of I guess a symptom-based response to everything that's going on is what I've become fully aware of. Oh man, there's so much goodness here. There's so much goodness, so much goodness. So first, I just want to share with your daughters, you know, urinary tract infections, kind of on a bioenergetic plane. And just kind of going back to like old school homegirl like Louise Hay, like Heal Your Body A to Z. She cited specifically urinary tract infections were about anger, releasing anger due to conflict and stress. So that kind of makes for an interesting insight. And so this whole concept of anger, I think every human right now is feeling anger on a multitude of levels, right? So it's anger, you know, there's the anger at, you know, what's happening. And then there's also just, you know, look, you're facing your partner, you're facing family members, and these childhood things are coming up. So perhaps old repressed anger that has never really materialized is now coming up. And at the end of the day, you got you and you to face. So a lot of us are just having this space to face ourselves. And there's a lot of anger there. And usually when we experience anger as adults, you know, we're taught that it's not a good emotion. So run from it, numb it, squash it, you know, but don't see it through. Don't see it through. But anger is actually a very human, very beautiful emotion. And it actually, there's a ton of energy there. Anger is a tremendously powerful, powerful force, and it can be wielded for our benefit as human beings from a physiological standpoint. So interestingly enough, one of the conversations I had with my daughter today, because again, you know, if the sleep is disrupted, that's also going to cause the crankies and the funnies. And I love, one of my spiritual mentors says, when your nervous system gets itchy, like you're itchy, your nervous system is itchy. And to me, that shows up like irritability and frustration, which again, you know, when you're tired, I mean, this is all related. So so she was doing her math and was not getting problems right, and went into a crying fit and said how much she hated math, and she hated this app, and she hated homeschool, and she was angry. And then she was like, and I'm no good at math. And so she started talking badly to herself. And, you know, I wouldn't say that is abnormal. I mean, she definitely gets frustrated easily in a general sense, but this is way magnified. This was like a whole meltdown that she wouldn't probably otherwise had. And so we got to have a beautiful conversation about anger. And the 9-year-old conversation around anger is it's first of all completely okay to be angry and to be frustrated. And perhaps that's also beautiful for you, because it seems as though the energy you're holding is that you were never actually allowed to metabolize that anger as a 7-year-old when you were in this really traumatic experience. So you're holding that repressed anger, they're picking up that energy, and then they're in this place where the collective is holding a lot of anger. There's this anger circulating. And so their ability to release that is coming out perhaps through a UTI. And so then it's really, can we come to a place? And then it's interesting because it's like, oh, I want to, you know, they're getting frustrated, so I want to show up and be patient. So one thing I've been doing is I've been having temper tantrums, purpose-driven temper tantrums, and then showing her, this is what it looks like. I'm really frustrated. I'm really irritable. I'm really angry, and I'm going to see it all the way through, because the power and the energy of the indignant little girl in me, once she's heard, what happens to anger, you're either going to go into a place of total self-destruction, or you're going to go into a place of total self-initiative. Yeah. So that was a choice I kind of was showing her, and I've been showing her like mommy meltdown kind of a thing, but it's more like, I don't want to say it's contrived, because it's not, because I'm really just, I'm noticing my own anger and frustration around things. And instead of hiding it from her, I'm allowing her to witness, like, I'm yelling at you and it's going to come all the way through. And then also, as this is happening, I see all the power in it. And then I get to make a decision. What am I going to do with that? It's going to open me up to curiosity and creativity, and it's going to open me up to receiving solutions in new and inventive ways. Anger precedes invention. Yep. Anger precedes curiosity. Anger precedes self-destructive behavior and addiction. So it's really just, you know, been this space of me being very vulnerable, and it feels horrible. And then it's like, whoa. And then I see all the self-judgment that I'm throwing up. Like, how could I act like this? This is so low vibe. This is so low frequency, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you know, here's an opportunity as a leader to be like, well, I don't have to subscribe to kind of these, like, you know, spiritual bypass rules that like are like there's a lot of rhetoric around like what it looks like to be a spiritual being and a spiritual practitioner and a spiritual leader and a leader in general. And I'm like, here's what just doesn't feel quite so good to me. It's like, I want to be able to be spiritual and be angry.
Yes.
And know that it's like, is it a lower frequency? Yeah, only if I dip and stay there. But if I dip and I notice, and so my daughter and I had this conversation today, we popped in the car. I said, look, you're having a moment. Here's what we get to do. We get to go drop off a thank you note to your school. They were offering to take in thank you notes for all of the response team that's been working really hard. So she wrote a beautiful letter, and she created this little lotus flower, and we picked a nurse at our local hospital, so it's going to go directly to her. I said, we get to go be grateful right now. And in the car on the way there, I was like, what does anger and frustration feel like? She goes, fire. It's like a big fire. I said, great. I said, okay, is that bad or good? And she said, bad. I said, well, let's look at that. And so the analogy, just to shorten this conversation, we came up with was, fire can either burn your house down, or it can stoke. It can generate the energy you need to make a change.
Yeah.
So which do you choose?
Mm-hmm.
And then we decided feeling curious, feeling creative, feeling motivated feels good.
Yeah.
And feeling frustrated and feeling hateful feels bad. So you burn your house down. Creativity. And either way, here's the thing though, you get to be angry.
Mm-hmm.
There is no option C, where it's like, take a deep breath, meditate and relax. It's like, no, be angry.
Yeah.
Throw a tantrum, throw a fit, scream, throw something. So the other thing that we've been doing is this beautiful meditation slash kind of exercise practice. I really see it more as an exercise because it's very physical, and it's called Fists of Anger. It's a Kundalini Kriya, and it's amazing. And it's I could share it. I have it on video. I actually have it I'm doing it with my daughter, and we shared it with her class last week. And it's 5 minutes, and it's like actually a real workout, but it's beautiful because for 5 minutes, you are literally focusing maybe that's kind of stuck in the energetic bodies, and you can just literally pull that sucker up and work through it. And again, the physiology is, it's literally creating the neuroendocrine cascade of hormones that are actually going to metabolize it. So it's like, you may still feel angry at the end, but you do that Fists of Anger meditation every day, and just make it like, this is practice. This is me practicing my spirituality and allowing that anger to see its way through. So we've been doing that. And then we've just also been like, and sometimes it's hard because sometimes I want to tell her like, knock it off, enough with the frustration and the crying. And like the go-to is always to shut it down, because that's what we've been taught. So it's just that, I would offer those two as kind of what's been best practice for us. And then, seeing her trembling at night, I'm like, well, yeah, of course, this is another way that her body is metabolizing the anger. So the more that we can do it in kind of who's to say what's conscious and unconscious, right? Maybe that's more conscious. So that's just been super, super powerful. I won't say that we have like a result at this point, because,
No, it's the embracing the process. And I think that's what we forget every time. It's about the embracing the process and loving the process and learning through the process. And there was another thing that you mentioned that I appreciated so much: guilt and shame associated with it as a parent. I had a few weeks ago, I had a moment, absolute meltdown in front of the girls too, at night over nothing, a freaking pajama. And the moment I exploded, I could see it coming. I could feel it coming. And it was like you said, you know, you just let it out and you let it come and you see it through. And then we had a beautiful conversation with the girls afterwards. You know, because the little one was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'll never do this again. I'm such a, you know, I don't want to be a bad child. It's like, no, you're not a bad child. And it's not your fault. You know, it was your behavior that triggered me. But as an adult, I get to choose how I react. You know, so I wanted to make sure that we had a conversation that we're not suppressing anything, we're honoring it. But then on the other hand, it's not shifting the guilt, which I think a lot of us have been raised with. Oh, I behaved badly, that's why I got spanked. No, that means that your parents couldn't control themselves, you know. um,
Absolutely.
so yeah, and I could notice even when they went to sleep, everything, you know, was fine, but I was consumed with this guilt and heaviness and shame for the whole following day. And I was like, wow, how much difficult do we make it for ourselves because
Mhm.
we then go through the shame and the guilt, as opposed to, again, experiencing and embracing the experience for whatever it is without labels attached and expectations. Again, being in a moment.
Being in the moment, being in the moment. That's like super, I've been jamming out on that too a lot lately, because it's like, well, this is kind of a great beautiful, you know, opportunity to really kind of like put a magnifying glass on, wait, what does that actually look like? Because I know it's, again, it's a lot of the what we see in the mainstream, particularly like like in the wellness space for years. It's like, you know, how many memes are out there that are like, be present, you know, like keep calm and stay in the moment, be present. And it's like, yeah, that's wonderful advice. And it's, there's no question that our greatest health and vitality and ecstasy lie in the purity of the moment.
Mm-hmm.
However, why is it that every human knocks themselves out of the moment? Why is it so hard for us to be present in the moment?
Mm,
Why do we live 100% of the time either in the future where everything is shit, or in the past where we're hung up and wallowing and just not letting go of some perceived wrongdoing or some perceived transgression, and we're holding it as regret, we're holding it as resentment, we're holding it as anger, we're holding it as self-judgment, self-criticism, and then it, you know, so either way it's like, you know, I mean, there's just so much, like Eckhart Tolle, I think he's done the best work of our modern time in giving people tools and a real awareness of the importance of being present. Yet, why aren't people doing it? Why aren't people doing it? And I was like, wow, that's a cool question. So I really, of course, like, you know, I look at this again, just what's the physiology? What's the physiology? They're like, why? I'm fascinated when we go against our own physiology. I'm like, why would we train ourselves to live in sympathetic drive? Why would we train ourselves to live in a constant state of fight or flight? That's really been 20 years of like unpacking for me, right? It's
mm-hmm.
like, you, because that's stress. We're stressed out, you know.
Yeah.
But just, and the body is actually designed to be able to do that. The nervous system has this wonderful capability. However, the body is designed to actually have its natural state be in parasympathetic dominance, meaning a natural state of rest and relax, our natural human state where we generate the most energy and where we feel the most vital and where we actually physiologically hold the most health in our
Yeah.
cells and our cellular structure, is in a state of relaxation. So the parasympathetic nervous system is keeping the heart rate in a very efficient pulse, is keeping the breathing rate very deep. And again, the more deep your breath, the more deep your life.
I like that.
Spiritual 101, right? The more shallow your breath, the more shallow your life. Like your breath always reflects how you are. So if you're like erratic and shallow breath, then your life is erratic and shallow. If your breath is slow and deep, then your life is relaxed and deep, meaningful, right? Meaningful breath, meaningful life. One who commands their breath can command pretty much anything. And the breath is presence. So the bottom line is, why do we kick ourselves into this physiological state of fight or flight that knocks us? Like, why do we choose this? I mean, I don't necessarily have an answer. I have some theories. However, what I can look at is the physiological ramifications of living in a state of fight or flight is so dysrhythmic and so dysfunctional. And so it's out of rhythm with the flow of life.
Yeah.
And it creates such dis-ease and disharmony in the system. It's what creates heart disease. It's what creates obesity. It's what creates diabetes, the big killers for now, but it's also a complete like breakdown of the immune system when we're operating from this state. And I won't get into like all the details, but so the point I'm making here is that because of fear, because of what we've been taught, because we're taught not to show our emotions, we've created this kind of fight or flight response, and then we've developed a neurological pattern around it, and we've locked that in as the norm. So our norm literally is to always be in this state. So what happens? What does that look like? That looks like it's actually more comfortable and familiar for us to be in a state of future or past.
Yep.
Because if we're in the present moment, that's actually unknown, which is scary. And so the amygdala is like, well, like, let's like, but the other piece of it is that why is it scary? What are we perceiving? What's the perceived threat? The perceived threat is we simply don't have the nervous system strength to hold the energy of the moment, to look at whatever is in front of us, whether it be like a huge challenge or a crisis or an amazing creative opportunity or the rapture of making love or eating a great meal or whatever it is. It's like we have not, those muscles are atrophied. So we're not actually like conditioned enough to hold that. But we've conditioned ourselves to hold this like future catastrophe and past resentment, like, because that's our familiar. So it's really a matter of like, you want to be in the moment, train for it. Like you train for a marathon, train for it. How do you train for it? Strengthening the nervous system so that you operate in a state of parasympathetic dominance. Strengthen the nervous system through, it's breath work. And it's also too, it's really strengthening the musculoskeletal system, because the neuromuscular coordination, if you can't mobilize and stabilize your skeleton in all the ways that a human can actually mobilize and stabilize, then you're actually not creating enough chemical reactions to get into parasympathetic dominance. You're not signifying the endocrine system to secrete the hormones that create this kind of wonderful soup that allows you to be present in the moment. It's like a whole cascade.
Whole new level of conversation right there.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I would offer, again, just coming back to just simple breath techniques, just even that fist of anger meditation has a breath practice with it. And it's a very it's a stroked breath. It's a purposeful breath. It's called O mouth breath, and it's powerful, and you're breathing equally in and out very powerfully through the mouth in an O shape. Because there's a lot of stimulation that happens around in the cheeks, and so the vagus nerve is here, and that is the bad boy, the good boy, the good girl that's controlling your parasympathetic nervous system. Being able to really kind of inwardly massage and activate that can trigger the parasympathetic, and you feel this parasympathetic response, because again, you're like, I'm so mad. Fuck this. I hate that person. Oh, I can't believe this happened to me. And you're like, just let it run the thing. Like, let it run the thing out. Let that inner trickster just let it burn itself out, right? Like, you stoke the flame, let it just whoosh, because eventually, like, what's going to happen? It's the body's like, oh yeah, thank you. Like, I'm getting the breath in, and I'm getting the ATP, CP generated, and now I'm moving into getting my energy from all this stored fat. And I feel actually, I feel like a little better. And like, oh, now I'm going to just secrete some serotonin, oxytocin, so I start to calm down a little bit. And it's not such a like adrenaline, dopamine, but I have that nice dopamine hit, and like everything's kind of just going back. And it's like, and 5 minutes of this, and you're, and then all of a sudden you're like, wow, I'm really buzzed, and I feel like really, you get this kind of a high, like the runner's high. And then, because you got all the feel good hormones, the endorphins, but then it's like this, what comes after the storm?
The calm and the sunrise.
Yeah, it's like there's only going to be that I, and then you're like, oh, this is what it feels like to be present. I was present in the anger, and I'm present in the letting go of that anger, and it's just it's like we were saying last week, practice victory. Like, so practice victory in whatever's in front of you, whether it's exhaustion or anger. Like, what is it, So, I mean, that victorious exhaustion is also just too related to how, like, you go to bed exhausted because you've held in all your emotions all day, and you're stressed and anxious, and I don't know what the world's going to look like. I'm going to run out of money, and oh my God, my business is going to go under, and all these things that on my health, and the health of my family, and what is this even going to look like? It's a whole new world, and how am I going to make ends meet? How am I going to pay my bill? And we're at this. I mean, it's like day 30.
Something. Who's counting?
Right. I mean, we could get into a whole thing about days, which is like a whole other fun topic, but it's what we're all, the brain, and again, those kind of like hypnotic, like again, some spiritual teaching. It's like the what is it called? The parapsychological thought form. Right? It's like everything's doom and gloom, everything's gonna suck, and we're holding that as kind of our energetic mandala. Like, what is that?
Yeah,
that's versus why not just hold the vision of what could be amazing, again, because we don't have the nervous system strength to like hold that, but we're very used to holding the everything's gonna suck. That feels comfortable because I can live in that fight or flight.
Yeah, although I do believe, I mean, at some point, I do believe that for those who embark on this journey, you get to the point where it becomes uncomfortable to hold the space for the trauma and all the negative, and it feels so much better to hold the body.
Absolutely.
Conversations that I've been having with my girls, with anybody who's willing to listen, pretty much. And I was like, I consciously unsubscribed from conversations around fear and pressure and how unprecedented times these are, and so on and so forth. It's like, my job, in order to lead, in order to thrive, in order to grow and evolve, I need to elevate myself. Yes, I have sympathy, I have love, I have compassion, I feel the pain that others are feeling, but that's even one more reason that I can't get to that level. And without any judgment too, you
Right.
know. And it's like, again, feeling of guilt comes up, like, am I too insensitive then if I don't participate in those conversations? But I think right now we do have a choice, as always. What do we focus on? Because we all know that we speak our thoughts into reality, that we manifest whatever we focus on. So I would invite whoever is open to this to be really conscious of, what do you choose to focus on? Just like my 7-year-old was so fixated on the I can't draw a
Yeah.
petal of a flower, as opposed to, let's take a look at the big picture.
Yeah.
You know.
But it's so true, and it's so, and then again, that's the beauty of it as well. I see, you know, the leaders, and when we say leaders, it's like, are you like you're holding the house down, you're being school teacher and mom and chef divine and home economist, or your world leader with the, you know, the fate of millions of lives in your hands, or you're the you know, at the helm of your company making decisions about if you're going to stay open or not.
Yeah.
You know, what leadership looks like is really all of us. So showing up as a leader, what I see is the leaders that are not only you know, kind of like ninja getting through these times, but really thriving and will continue to thrive, are the leaders that are being really present. Yeah. And really taking these opportunities to physiologically, you know, train for these upgrades, train for these bioenergetic upgrades. And it's not so much like, oh, I see all this fear-based conversation going on, and then I choose not to be a part of it. It's also too being able to go, I can hold that. I can hold that perspective. I can see that perspective. I can hold all perspectives in my energetic field. I can hold that and stay steady and stay neutral minds, and kind of allow a little bit of the fight or flight to kick up, and then say, oh, I noticed the fear around this, and play it through, and then be able to alchemize that into what's possible. So it's not just speaking the affirmation out of saying, I'm going to think good things. It's
exactly
really, what is the, how are you imbibing that?
Yes.
You start to embody that when you've actually taken in, you know, it was like I was saying to one of my dear beloved besties and colleagues the other day, it's like, you can't, you can't forgive someone if you're not really pissed at them first.
Yes.
And so we all walk around like, I have to let it go, and I have to forgive them. But did you ever even just like be like, you fucking suck, I hate you, you're the worst, and just like be that like indignant 14-year-old that's like digging her heels in? And like, because that's been a spiritual practice of, personally for me, the past few weeks, it's really my spiritual guide really calling me in to do that kind of work of just like, what if you just got really creative and like let that thing play itself out. Mm-hmm. So it's like, yeah, you can't forgive somebody that you're not first just like, yeah. So it's like, you can't say, I'm going to choose to have this wonderful thought if you don't see the polarity. It's a polarity, you know, world. So it's like, well, what is the thing? So it's like, I see that in my future, I could hold this energetic model of like, everything's doom and gloom, everything's going to stop. But like you said, well, that's getting real boring and it doesn't feel good. We know it's not true, because if it was true, it would feel good in our systems. It feels like shit, but we keep doing it because it's a habit. So now we're like looking at it, because we got the time, we're like, oh, I see that I have the habit of going into the doom and gloom, and that my anxiety is simply just like manifesting future failure or disaster. Interesting. What's there? Mm-hmm. And then you go and you could go and do all the whole like childhood, like I got hurt and this is why I think that, and then you get to that point where that's kind of boring too. But you know, like well, what's the feeling though, right? Oh, it feels really bad. Cool. Can I just allow it. I don't have to solve it. I don't have to run from it.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just feel bad? Can I feel just like really scared, really threatened, really worried? And again, not judge it, be like, oh, I'm such a low vibe and I need to do all the things to raise my vibration. Yes, that's all going to happen when you are there.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, and you're just like, and in that moment is a moment where you go, I'm human. Oh, thank God. And it hurts so bad that it's so good, because now when I'm in so much pain, what is there to do? Ah, release. Ah, cellular clearing. Ah, cellular repair. Alchemy. Like, it's funny sometimes because sometimes I hear some people talking and I was like, they're like saying all the things. It's like, I'm alchemizing it. And I was like, Dianne, like, are we talking about the same thing here? Are we talking about like the chemical reaction here? Like it's a reaction.
Okay,
there is some reaction, right? There's got to be a something to have the reaction to.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
Right? The chemistry of anger, the chemistry of fear, if it's moving in the body and you're like, oh, let me go watch Netflix, or let me go start a fight with somebody, or let me, drink a bottle of wine, or let me beat on myself, or let me like cast out this doom and gloom, or let me say all the feel good affirmation. Oh, I'm going to just think that everything's going to be awesome. And I'm just going to not look at politics, and I'm just going to put my covers up, and I'm just going to pretend that everything's great. And I'm going to Pollyanna the shit out of it.
Yeah.
But there's no, the chemical reaction, like you cut.
Yeah.
The nitrogen, the hydrogen, the oxygen, all that goodness, you got like the hydrogen plus the oxygen plus, and then it's like, where's that little beautiful arrow that points to like the, right? What are you trying to create, break down, and build?
Oh, I love that.
So geek out on that stuff, but yeah, that's what I love.
Conversation, because we're just getting started, but we do have to bring it to a close.
Absolutely. This is so awesome. You're such a joy. You're such an inspiration. I just love you.
Love you, and thank you for sharing all of this, and thank you for being so open. And to the audience, I hope you found the answer that you've been looking for. I hope Dianne and I gave you a permission in case you were looking for permission to feel what you're feeling and experiencing what you're experiencing, and to allow your kids to do the same. And absolutely. I hope we ignited some ideas to help you navigate this process, and just know that you're not alone. We're all in this together.
Yeah, we're feeling it too. We're feeling all the worry, the shame, the anger.
Yeah. So,
how else could we speak to it if we weren't right there walking the walk? We're all on this holy human experience together, for sure. For sure.
So you know where to find us, you know where to find Dianne, you know where to find me. If there's anything we can help you with, reach out. We're here for you. Sending you much love. Bye.